I'm Locke Meredith. I'd like to invite you to join me on the next Legal Lines, where my guest is Louise Hines Myers. She is an East Baton Rouge District Attorney Prosecutor. She's been so for almost 13 years, and she's running for a judicial judgeship here in the 19th Judicial District Court, vacated by Judge Tim Kelly. She's running because she's handled almost every kind of crime, murders down to child sex crimes. She's running because she's been endorsed by 3 district attorneys, Hiller Moore, Tony Clayton, and former judge and district attorney Doug Morrow. So join us on the next Legal Lines with Louise Hines Myers. Locke Meredith, Sean Fagan and Associates has served our community by airing Legal Lines, a community educational program for 18 years weekly to Baton Rouge and the surrounding areas. Watch Legal Lines at LockeMeredith.com or Cox Channel 1004.
Hi, I'm Sean Fagan of Locke Meredith, Sean Fagan and Associates. When insurance companies have been unfair, we've never been afraid to go to trial. Fighting hard to protect your rights, we never settle a case out of convenience. We only settle when it's right for you. Whether you hire us at all, give us a call.
Hello, welcome to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith. I'm very pleased to have on the show for the very first time Louise Hines Myers. She is a prosecutor for the District Attorney's Office, has been since 2010, I believe. She's running for judge, 19th JDC. Wonderful judge. Tim Kelly just retired. It's going to be a criminal seat, and she's a criminal prosecutor. Pleasure to meet you, Louise Hines Myers.
Nice to meet you too.
Let's kind of dive in. Tell folks kind of where you come from. Give them a foundation of who you are as a person.
So I am from here. I grew up kind of at Highland and Lee. My parents are Bunny Prosser Hines and Bill Hines, and I have 3 older brothers.
Your dad was a doctor, right?
He was. He's retired now, but I have 3 older brothers, and because
that's what makes you so tough.
Yes, it is. I always lost King of the Mountain growing up, but yes.
You're getting them back now.
It made me a fighter.
Make them appear before you. Mm-hmm. So, education. Kind of where'd you go to school and such?
I went to kindergarten through 12th grade at U High, and then I went to the University of Richmond for 2 years, and then came back to LSU and went to LSU Law School.
Excellent. Married?
Married. My husband's name is Michael Myers. He works for ExxonMobil, and I have 2 girls, Marin and Maggie. One is 5, and the other one will be 3 on election day.
Uh-oh, we have a Maggie in our family. Wonderful to be at that season of life with them. So tell folks, working for the district attorney is not an easy job, but as I understand it, that's the first job you really had after you graduated law school.
It was what I wanted to do.
LSU Law School, right?
Yes. It was what I wanted to do, though.
Why?
Because I think my parents and my grandparents really taught me to give back, and so that, it just kind of interested me.
It's just a very, very tough profession, and so, but you're tough. I've read a lot of stuff about you, and you've been extraordinarily successful. You've been there, 13 years?
Almost. Mm-hmm.
And you have prosecuted some of the most heinous crimes that I can imagine. You've put murderers behind bars, life for life, rapists for 40 years. You started in the field of sexual abuse and child and such crimes. Explain to folks what that means, what you've had to deal with and see, and folks you've had to help.
So in about 2015, I started with doing just sex crimes. And that includes sex crimes perpetrated against children as well as adults. That's stranger rapes, that's acquaintance rapes, that you name it. They're really tough cases because the victim is a lot of times the only evidence that you have. And so you a lot of times have to traumatize the victim through the process, put them through the process.
Relive it. They got to relive it.
To get to the justice that you're seeking. And that really hit me hard, especially with the kids, because I'd sit down and meet with them and they wouldn't want to be there. They would be stressed out. They wouldn't who would want to talk about the most traumatizing aspect of their life with a complete stranger.
And when,
no one.
When you say kids, we're talking about little bitty kids to folks who I guess are under 18?
Yes. Anybody that can convey what's going on or what has happened is,
And so you were having great difficulty, instead of giving up or losing half your cases because the people just couldn't relive it, the children couldn't relive it. You came up with a very novel idea that's been extraordinarily successful.
Yes, I brought my dog, my three-legged dog Goose, and his name is Goose because he's silly. He's a silly goose. And Goose did the trick. He made kids feel more at ease.
Comfort animal,
yeah,
right?
He
Bottom
made
line?
Yeah, he made him want to come back to see Goose, meet us at the dog park maybe, just foster a relationship. But Goose is an escape artist, and after meetings or before meetings, he would run around the DA's office barking. So I had to look for a more well-behaved...
A professional comfort
yes,
dog, huh?
a well-behaved comfort dog.
And you found?
I found Diesel.
The infamous Diesel. What a great name, though.
Yes, it is.
So tell folks about Diesel.
So Diesel is a Lab Golden Cross. It took me 2.5 years to get him. I had to go through a bunch of hoops and...
You had to get some legislation passed, right?
That was after I got him, but yes. He is, we call him Dior because he's like Eeyore, just very mopey and slow. And his job really is to stay still and stay in one spot for as long as he possibly can, just so that kids can lay on him or pet him or whatever they need to do. But yes, after I got him, he was used almost immediately in a trial where a little girl was getting sick before the trial was going to start, and so we introduced her to Diesel, and Diesel had a great effect on her. And unfortunately, that case ended in a mistrial. It was a hung jury, and so we ended up trying it again with her consent. She said, if Diesel's there, I'll do it. And so between the first trial and the second trial, I got legislation passed to make it so that Diesel could sit at her feet in the witness stand, or any child's feet in the witness stand if they want it during trial.
And did you get a conviction that time?
No.
Good God Almighty. Remarkable. Well, it shows you the difficulty of prosecuting these horrific crimes. Terrifying.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So he's now part of, I guess, the force, so to speak?
I call him my fur weapon, yeah. He goes to school, or not school, work every day. I call it daycare, but now that I'm on leave to run, I have to
Meaning run for office?
Yes, I still have to drop him off every day so that he can help.
Because he lives with you?
He does, yes. And he keeps my daughter safe at night. She's a little scared of the dark, so he sleeps with her.
Total comfort dog.
Yep.
Well, it's a wonderful story. It's fascinating because, I think we all, sooner or later in our lives, kind of experience the comfort an animal can give you. And it's fascinating because you see our service members who need this. You see folks who have a lot of different areas of trauma in their life that need it. And it's amazing what you accomplish by getting that as a tool to be used by the district attorney's office to properly present evidence to a judge and jury to put some of these folks away forever, I hope, who deserve it. So congrats, and hope it keeps going in that regard. So tell me kind of what has inspired you to want to run for judge. You've now done this for 13 years almost. Tell folks what is the impetus to make you want to do this? Big step, big sacrifice.
It is a big step, and yes, it is a big sacrifice. I decided to do this because we need it. We need to put judges on the bench, the criminal bench, who have experience in criminal court.
All right, we'll continue this on the next segment. This is Locke Meredith, Legal Lines. My very special guest, Louise Hines Myers, running for 19th JDC criminal judge. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Mitchell Meredith. Injuries happen when you least expect them to, making your life more complicated. At Locke Meredith, Sean Fagan and Associates, we know this and we strive to help each of our clients during these times. Whether you hire us at all, give us a call at 272-5555.
Locke Meredith, Sean Fagan and Associates has won for our clients over $175 million over the decades, but our greatest success is our clients who have chosen and trusted us to help them. Whether you hire us at all, give us a call. You've got nothing to lose.
I'm lawyer Collins Locke Meredith. Trust is important when hiring an injury law firm. At Locke Meredith, Sean Fagan Associates, thousands have trusted us and gotten the results they deserved. Visit us at LockeMeredith.com. Whether you hire us at all, give us a call, 272-5555.
Welcome back to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith and pleased to have a very special guest, Louise Hines Myers. She's a prosecutor for the East Baton Rouge Parish District Attorney's Office until she decided to run for a judgeship, 19th JDC, that will be a criminal judgeship. Let's dive back in. So why did you decide to run for judge?
Because we need to put judges on the bench, on the criminal bench, that have criminal legal experience. And I've got that.
You've got it for 13 years almost.
Yes.
It's important too because you have handled very serious cases, murders, all the sex offenses, I mean, just the litany of horrible crimes, and you've prosecuted them, you've won, you've fought appeals all the way up to the Louisiana Supreme Court, and you've prevailed. So explain to folks what you've learned in those 12 years, because you're going to actually have been on one side of the bench, the judge's chair, and then in the judge's chair. Explain your role as a prosecutor and what it's taught you that will make you a great judge.
So as a prosecutor, you have the burden of proof. You have all of the evidence.
Burden of proving
proving the crime occurred and that the individual charged did it. You have the evidence that the police or the sheriff's deputies collected, and it's never a perfect scenario.
And they do their very best,
yes.
But I mean, there's so much technology and hoops you got to jump over and people who won't cooperate. It's a hard time to collect the evidence.
It is. So you get the best evidence that you have, and you have to, it's kind of a chess game. You have to figure out how to get it into the courtroom in front of the jury or the judge.
Which we call into evidence.
Yes, based on the rules of evidence. So,
which is a big book of rules.
It is. It's about, well, the criminal code plus the code of evidence is about this thick.
It's like doing a dance.
It is, yeah. It's kind of, I find it kind of fun. But you also have to do it in such a way that you respect the constitutional rights of the individual who is charged.
That's a second. I've actually read that and talked to you previously, and you've brought that up. It was in the context of diesel, I believe. And it's almost like you have to cut your brain in half and remember, you know, yeah, you're the prosecutor, but you can't violate the rights provided by the U.S. and the state constitutions and the statutes.
So I think that, well, I know that prosecutors are charged with doing what's right. Most attorneys are supposed to advocate for their clients. We are supposed to advocate, as a prosecutor, you're to advocate for justice or for what's right.
That's a big difference.
Yes.
You're not an advocate. You're going to do whatever it takes within the law to make sure your client wins or prevails as best you can. You're wearing two hats almost. That's a fast, I can't say that I fully comprehended the juxtaposed positions and analysis that you have to use.
I think it's because prosecutors have a lot of power, and so that power can't be used willy-nilly and on a whim. It needs to be used to hold the people responsible that are responsible for things, but you also have to play fair.
Play within the bounds of law, which is supposed to basically make sure it's done properly and fairly, and someone who's not guilty. We'd rather not put a man in jail who did something wrong than to put a man who did not do anything wrong in jail.
Definitely. because
Which is really interesting because wearing a hat as a prosecutor means you're actually, in some weird ways, kind of being a judge in advance of the judge and the jury.
Well, yeah. You, from arrest to trial, you are the judge. You're looking at the facts of the case, the evidence that you have, the facts of the individual who's charged, the wishes of the victim, and you're trying to get justice potentially without going to trial, without having to put anybody through that. So yeah, you're acting as the judge there too.
So let's kind of continue down this process. So the law enforcement gets the best evidence they can for you, and it's difficult times often. And then you get it, you look at what the evidence is you have. It's not your fault that it isn't perfect. It is what it is, and that's what you got to work with. And then you now start analyzing that evidence in the context of the law and what your burden is and what you have to prove. You look at, I guess, your suspect and decide they, one of the repeat offenders, habitual offender, or are they first time? How do you analyze, that fairness component to your analysis?
So you look at so in each file that we get, we have a criminal history, and it'll show how many arrests someone has, how many convictions someone has. Sometimes the police report will go into detail about prior incidents, but generally just looking at a file, given the information that we have in the DA's office, we know whether someone is, or you learn, I guess, whether someone is a habitual offender, a habitual violent offender, someone who is riddled with some sort of addiction that is causing them to do something, or someone who just made a terrible decision and feels terrible about it.
And so that kind of helps, I presume, the enthusiasm or the degree of determination to take them out, put them in jail, versus maybe some pretrial diversion or some probation or other lesser sentencing.
Yeah, forcing their hands into getting help for...
Pay some repercussions.
Yes.
They've got to pay the price
Yeah.
for what they've done.
Yeah.
But you're giving, I guess, some of them an opportunity to rehab and rehabilitate.
To stop it, yeah. To stop it by getting to the source of the issue. Yeah.
And so how do you wear that hat? I presume you meet with the victims and you hear their stories and their families. You look at the degree of damage and trauma and such. And you meet, I presume, also probably across the table with another lawyer on the end, their defense counsel. But with the perpetrator, how does that exchange go?
So you generally don't really ever talk to the perpetrator, but you just
Their attorneys are in there constantly trying to convince you what great guys they are,
Yes.
what gals they are.
And you have to listen. If you don't listen, I don't think that you're being fair to either side. But you also have to take it with a grain of salt too, because they're the ones that have a lot to lose.
And they're the advocate. The attorney is the advocate.
Yeah.
They don't have that same judicial role in a lot of ways that a prosecutor has. All right, and so I know that there's various ways that, depending on that analysis that you make, that you can kind of cut a case short before you take it to trial. Is that correct?
Yes.
So what are those ways? Kind of summarize them and then we'll pick it up on the next segment.
So there are different ways to handle cases. Some where an individual has just made a terrible decision and feels really guilty.
I'll tell you what, let's pick this up on the
Okay.
next segment. This is Locke Meredith, Legal Lines. My special guest, Louise Hines Myers, running for Judicial Judge, 19th JDC, criminal seat. Be right back.
Hi, I'm Sean Fagan of Locke Meredith, Sean Fagan and Associates. Open the phone book or look online. There are plenty of lawyers to choose from. And if you ask any of them, they'll agree that the vast majority of claims settle without ever having gone to trial. And I'll tell you, any lawyer can settle a claim. It's not hard to settle a claim, but it takes hard work to get a client what he or she deserves. At Locke Meredith, Sean Fagan Associates, we have a proven record of working hard for our clients. Whether you hire us at all, give us a call.
Welcome back to Legal Lines. I'm very pleased to have on the show for the first time Louise Myers. She is running for judge of the 19th JDC. It's a criminal seat. She's been a prosecutor for almost 13 years, tried heinous crimes, She knows what it's like to, in a lot of ways, wear a judge's hat. It's an interesting role that you play as a prosecutor. We were talking about kind of how you analyze the evidence, how you look at the parties involved, the victim, the perpetrator of the crime. There's ways that you can resolve it without having to go all the way to trial. Quickly explain those to folks, and then let's shift gears to dealing with the judge, dealing with the jury.
So there, of course, for the worst of crimes, you can't, I mean,
You go to trial.
You go to trial, or the individual needs to plead to something that keeps them away from the public.
Which means put them in jail.
Yes,
All
for
right.
as long as possible.
Which you've done.
I have done, yes.
For 40 years in life.
Yes.
All right.
Then you can plead to a lesser offense than the charged offense and get less time in jail or probation, depending on the facts of the case, the evidence that you have, the wishes of the victim.
And you guys actually make recommendations in that regard to the judge, do you not?
We do, yes.
Which carries great weight, I presume, depending on your relationship with the judge.
Yeah, most judges won't alter our proposed resolution. But a lot of times those resolutions are meant for situations where the victim is out a lot of money and the defendant needs to pay it back. If they go to jail, they're not going to be able to pay it back. So there's that aspect.
Like a compromise component to it.
There's that aspect to weigh in. And then there are things like drug court or recovery court, where you're getting to the root of the problem. The individual has to plead guilty, but once they finish this drug rehab program, the charges are basically wiped away.
And we've had former Judge Tony Marabella on, who is like his ministry in so many ways, and he changed a lot of lives. It doesn't always work, but for folks who are drug addicts, the recidivism rate for guys who go to jail is like, what, 80%? It's astronomical. So for the guys who are just doing it for the wrong, drugs or addiction, hopefully that helps, provides another tool. So let's shift gears now.
Okay.
You got to go to court. That's what you decide needs to be done. And you have a lot of encounters before the trial, during the trial, behind the bench or sidebar, and the judge's chambers as the trial's progressing. Even after the trial, appellate briefs have to be filed, motions are filed, all that stuff. Explain, because as I understand it, prosecutors have pretty much one judge that they appear in front of and prosecute in front of for the majority of their term. Is that right? Their time?
Yes, you can be switched around. And when I was just doing sex crimes, I went to different judges because I was focused on the subject matter as opposed to a certain docket. But generally, there are 4 prosecutors in each judge's section, and they handle all of the cases in front of that judge on a daily basis. So it takes probably 4 hours to run 4 to 5 hours to run a docket every day.
And a docket is all the folks who've got to appear in front of the judge.
Yes.
All the cases you got to argue about or present information about.
And they're all in different stages of the process. So there's arraignment, which is where someone walks in and says guilty or not guilty. And most people say not guilty because if they say guilty at arraignment, they're not going to get any information about what we have against them. And then after arraignment, it's set for motions where we duke it out on what evidence can be put in front of the jury and put into evidence. And there's some other things that you.
So the defendants are saying they can't present this evidence. You're saying in motions, yes, we can. You have a hearing in front of the judge, and he decides or she decides.
Yes. Okay. And then once all of those motions are dealt with, and sometimes it takes multiple dates, a trial is scheduled, and in the interim between the motion date or the last motion date and the trial, you're trying to resolve the case, because we generally set like 10 to 12 trials on a jury week, and only one can go in each courtroom. So you have to whittle it down to the one that can't be resolved without a trial. So,
and then you try it.
Yes.
And whether or not there's a judge deciding the case or jury is what?
It is the defendant's choice.
Period.
Yes.
And normally are they deciding they want a bench trial or a jury trial these days?
It depends on the judge.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So they're more worried, if they're more worried a judge is going to put them in prison, they're going to go with the jury trial and kind of roll the dice?
Yes.
Okay. Now, when you try a case and you prevail, or if you lose, appeals can be taken.
They can't. So if we lose, we can't appeal.
Right.
The state doesn't have any rights.
Done. It's over.
Yes, it's over. But the defendant, if they lose, can appeal, and one of the roles of a prosecutor is to make sure that all of the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed as far as what we've provided to the defendant and to the defense, so that they're not tried by ambush, basically, and that all of the rules are followed. So if they're not followed, they'll have something that the appellate court can actually take a bite out of.
And then they file their briefs, and then you have to file a responsive brief disagreeing with whatever they're arguing requires a new trial, or it's over with and they go home.
Yes.
All right. So tell me kind of about this election process. Once you decided to dive in head first, kind of what's going on, when's the election, how can you vote, all of that stuff.
So early voting starts tomorrow. That's March 11th, and it goes through March 18th, except for the 12th, the Sunday. And then the election day is March 25th. Early voting you can do downtown at City Hall, which is 222 St. Louis Street, or at the Louisiana State Archives on Essen Lane. And then on election day, it's wherever you normally vote.
And as I understand it, there's multiple candidates. Will there possibly be a runoff?
Possibly, yes. And
Okay, do we know when that would be?
April 29th.
Okay, and in that case, basically it's the two top vote gatherers, and then they're squaring off against each other. How are you planning to handle that if that occurs, if you don't win a majority, meaning greater than 50% of the vote?
Well, I'll play King of the Hill, or Queen of the Hill. I'll do my best to get the vote out and get people to support me.
It's been a pleasure to meet you, Louise Hines Myers.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing you on the bench, we hope.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Locke Meredith, Legal Lines, Louise Hines Myers, thank you for being with us.